Do 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 do. Writing an Indiana Jones video. Do 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 do. I wonder who that could be. Hello?
Listen carefully.
Who are you?
Who I am is of no importance. What is important is your life.
What are you talking about?
We have 5 snipers trained on you using heat sensing. If you don't comply, you die.
Why are you doing this?
You will know in time. All you need to know now is that your Indiana Jones review is postponed.
What do you mean?
We need you to make a long video essay about the Planet of the Apes movies. All of them. And if you don't do it, it seems your career may be cut short.
Okay. I'll do it.
Good. You will hear from me again soon.
Oh, shit. At the dawn of time, it was all so simple. There were no cities, no cars, no internet, no people. All that existed was Monkey. Now, Monkey was perfectly happy the way he was, no doubt about that. However, a member of his tribe began to walk on 2 legs, and soon the human race was born. We've evolved a lot since the days of Monkey, but remnants remain of our past life. And one of those remnants is the Planet of the Apes franchise. Planet of the Apes is a 10-part anti-human propaganda epic that is primarily a thesis on the concept of anarcho-primitivism, or to put it in simpler terms, the Planet of the Apes saga is notable for how it pioneered the 7-act film structure, popularized the double-axle inverted dolly shot, and swept every single Oscars category it was ever nominated for. But today, I want to do a complete retrospective of this beautiful and influential filmmaking masterwork. I want to deconstruct its core themes and see how a franchise could be built this perfectly, down to the last minute detail. So join me on a journey through time, space, and matter as we discuss the Planet of the Apes.
Here we go.
Can we take a moment to respect how fucking bizarre it is that this movie became a blockbuster franchise? The original Planet of the Apes is a political and social critique of the American government and of the human race as a whole. It is full of extremely clever and well-executed satirical scenes, all while remaining an interesting character drama, and having one of the best twists in the history of film.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Damn you! Damn you all to hell!
This is going to be the most intellectual part of this video, so if you want to skip to the funny haha bad movie parts, scroll through the chapters, dingus. Also, spoilers. Planet of the Apes is for all intents and purposes a feature-length Twilight Zone episode, just with a higher budget and also starring Jesus. I mean, think about it. Space exploration crew lands on a mysterious planet where the roles are reversed and apes are intelligent and humans are dumb. Main character struggles to survive as the apes, mirroring how humans would react to this kind of situation, reason with what to do now that something is going against their long-held worldview, and it ends with a big earth-shattering twist in the credits roll. And there's a very deep and important reason for why this is so similar to a Twilight Zone episode. Rod Sterling wrote a few drafts of the script. Okay, moving on. So something to mention right off the bat. God damn, Franklin directed the shit out of this movie. I cannot stress to you how impressive the chase scenes are. The sets are so expertly designed to perfectly block this film, isolating characters and moments while allowing them to flow within a single shot. The production design of this movie is fantastic and truly absorbs you into this world. The costuming is somewhat dated but still wildly impressive considering the time period, and you really do forget they're in costumes after a while. I love the slow pacing, especially in how it is utilized to milk every dramatic moment. Every scene creates tension as Taylor Lautner's predicament only gets more dangerous. It creates these eerie feelings of dread, especially the large use of extreme wide shots that make the character look minuscule in this world. And the music is pretty dope. Now, to get into the meat of the film. Planet of the Apes is truly a great science fiction piece because it really gets you asking questions. Not because of plot holes or anything of that nature, but because you have a genuine curiosity for this interesting world. For example, what do other animals look like in this world? Are any animals other than horses still alive, or has the entire biosphere been altered in the last 2,000 years? What exactly do the sacred schools say, and what is this religion they follow really like? Why does it seem that there is a clear aristocracy belonging to orangutans? And then after the film, you have bigger questions. How did the human race fall? What made apes gain the intellectual high ground? I want to know more about how this world works. And that may sound like I'm saying the film doesn't give us enough in terms of world building, but that's absolutely not true. They give us a lot to chew on. The most surprising thing about this movie becoming such a massive franchise is how decidedly and shockingly counterculture this film is. It harshly criticizes the American government and how religion can stop progress. It is a pretty cynical film that points out all of the flaws of the human ego in a way you can't sit well with. Similarly to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it puts the audiences and characters in a powerless place, leaving them helpless to the people out to hurt them. The difference is where Texas Chainsaw is pretty focused on the animal rights angle, Planet of the Apes is a bit more broad and up for interpretation. That's what makes it so fun to me. The way you view the world and the problems in it will have an effect on how you view this film. I personally felt an unbearable dread of a government system designed to keep you powerless. Our main character is denied all rights as a person despite every argument against him being extremely flawed. It's almost like there was a certain movement going on in America at the time that the original book was written, where a marginalized group was being unfairly mistreated by the government and by people in certain areas. And this angle of viewing makes the twist even more scathing, as it implies that racial, social, and economic disparity leads to the downfall of civilization, punctuated by the final haunting image of the Statue of Liberty in shambles. Planet of the Apes is fantastic, and honestly a much better way to start this marathon than last time. Can't wait to see the next great entry in this series.
What are you talking about?
What the actual I take back what I said. When I said I wanted to know about this world, I was naive, because boy oh boy, do I know more about the Planet of the Apes. And boy oh boy, do I wish I didn't.
Oh my god! What is that?
So let's start with the elephant in the room. The budget dropped off for this leg of the franchise, and it will only continue to decrease. The first was made for $5 million and looks pretty darn great, but this one was made for half that and arguably needed more money than the first. I mean, there are more apes, an entire underground city, and more random special effects than the first. Anyways, this movie looks like ass.
Nasty!
Most damning shots are any of the shots with big crowds, and unfortunately for this movie, there's a lot of those. These shots are so damning because you can tell that some costumes definitely cost more than others, especially in this scene near the start with the military pep rally? I don't know what the fuck this scene is, but in this scene there are a bunch of shots where you can clearly see some of the costumes are really nice and are blended with makeup on the extras' faces. And then some that are just nice Halloween masks. Like here's the main gorilla guy and he looks pretty cool. But you turn and see this dude.
So if you're ready, let's go for the million.
Who's getting the best head?
There's some pretty intense use of green screen that looks absolutely tragic, and many of the backgrounds they're replacing with aren't doing them any favors. Also, those fire and lightning effects have me dying. I can't take it, dude. They look like something I would have made back in the 6th grade. There were definitely some times where it was blatantly obvious they were in a studio. Like, bro, there ain't no way there's working lights in a subway after a nuclear explosion and 2,000 years of sitting there. How the fuck can I see these motherfuckers so clearly? This movie introduces absurd amounts of new lore into this franchise that we really did not need to know. So the big new lore dump is apparently humans have been down beneath the ape planet the whole time. Cool. Hold up, what? How are they surviving down there? There's water, but there ain't animals down there unless they're eating rats. And if they're vegetarian, I'm sorry to tell y'all that studio lighting isn't a replacement for the sun. They worship an atomic bomb because apparently it brought them peace or something. Maybe your definition of peace differs from mine, but I don't think mutation that makes you look like Freddy Krueger having the worst hangover of his life is a good thing. That's literally all the bomb brought you. And then one of the other big developments of the Planet of the Apes cinematic universe is that ape racism exists apparently. Thanks, guys! The first one definitely had subtext of some kind of race-based hierarchy, but it seemed more like orangutans at the top and then everyone else was just kind of there. If anything, it seemed like the lower class was gorillas. But this movie said, nah, it's them chimpanzees that's at the bottom. But also the only characters that are actively racist towards other species is the chimps. They be saying some nasty shit about them gorillas. Really be spreading some racial stereotypes. At one point, the chimpanzees are protesting the gorillas going on a military campaign into the Forbidden Zone because of animal rights or something. I don't know, I didn't watch the movie. And when they get arrested, one of them deadass says, "Gorilla brutality."
You let that sink in.
At one point, the gorilla guy says something about how all humans are evil because their skin is white.
I don't say all humans are evil simply because their skin is white.
My bad, he actually doesn't say they're evil because of that. First off, what color do you call that? Second off, did they forget about everyone who isn't Caucasian? Like, the spot they are in used to be New York. a pretty diverse area. And this dude underground is black, but I guess that was a mask. Do black people not exist in this universe? The biggest problem with this movie is that so little happens in the first act that the second and third don't have time to tell a full story. So they hilariously just don't. It takes 40 minutes of the 90-minute movie for us to finally get underground and have the story actually begin. And at that point, the movie just doesn't give a single shit. Things just kind of happen for no reason except to get to the next thing. There's zero stakes to anything because you as a viewer are just so baffled by the things this movie is telling you that you can't connect at all. You were shown a bunch of cult members singing to a bomb and then expected to care about a fight between these two dudes. Who gives a shit about this fight when their faces are all f***ed up and the movie doesn't explain it? Yeah, now I know there are mutated species of human, but how was I supposed to know that without the Planet of the Apes wiki? The twist ending that apparently all of these movies are going to have is that the bomb went off and now everybody has died. Which means that the next one is going to have to pull some bullshit out of its ass to justify how there's another movie. Yay! Can't wait to see the next one.
Wow. What do you know?
I went into Escape with the idea, from the Hulu description, that this movie would be about Zira and Cornelius escaping the planet and would take a concept for maybe a 30-minute TV show and stretch it across an entire movie. And praise Jesus Christ, that did not happen. What we got instead is like 1,000 times better. Escape from the Planet of the Apes follows Zira and Cornelius going back in time to the first Thanksgiving to get turkeys and crash landing on Earth just a few weeks after Taylor's crew left Earth in the original, and then they become celebrities. So an early question you might be asking is, how did they get off future Earth when the bomb exploded? Well, apparently a random ape who was introduced in this movie named Dr. Milo was able to find and figure out how to fly Taylor's spacecraft, and then they went through a disturbance in time to get to present-day Earth. But you may have more questions, and before you ask them in the comments, I will answer them the best I can.
Shut the fuck!
So one of the first major things to notice is that this movie looks a lot better. A big factor is that this movie definitely didn't need nearly as many special effects as the previous two. There's only a few ape costumes, and therefore there aren't any moments like in the last one where you're just fully taken out. Well, except for this gorilla suit, but I laughed so hard that it didn't matter. I like what it is doing with the cinematography. There's lots of well-blocked long takes, which I highly appreciate. I enjoyed the score. It's kind of jazzy and groovy. Cornelius and Zira are both really fun and entertaining characters, and that's a big reason for why this movie works. Like, sure, they're both flawed. Cornelius has a bit of an issue with standing up to authority, and Zira's a racist.
Cornelius, as an intellectual, you know damned well the gorillas are a bunch of militaristic nincompoops, and the orangutans a bunch of blinkered pseudoscientific geese.
But that's what makes them interesting. I enjoy seeing them interact with people of modern Earth, and they're really cute in scenes together. The criticism I've seen leveled at this movie is that it doesn't compare well to the original, but this movie isn't even trying to be the original. The first Planet of the Apes is decidedly a serious sci-fi drama that asks interesting philosophical questions about the nature of humanity and how we form our governments and societies. And this one is just a comedy about talking apes, and it kind of works. Roddy McDowall has phenomenal comedic timing. I laughed out loud multiple times during this movie because Cornelius is actually really funny.
Does the other one talk?
Only when she lets me.
May I measure your inside legs, sir?
No. Tell me, how do you find our women? Very human.
And I'm glad this movie doesn't try to be the original because I like when franchises deviate into new ideas and genres. This one finally revealed how apes became the higher race, and it was not what I was expecting in any way, shape, or form. So apparently, all of the dogs and cats died, and the world needed pets. So they took apes as pets, and over a few hundred years, the apes became human servants and then eventually overthrew them. I am actually really glad to finally know. This film made me realize something I find infectiously interesting about this film. What makes this one work and the first work for me, while Beneath doesn't. And that is how these films depict people whose status quos are drastically changed. The first one shows us an ape world whose status quos are changed when a human talks?
What the Sigma?
This one shows us the exact opposite, and I think I find it more interesting. There's a large chunk of this movie that heavily reminded me of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with all the media sequences of people reacting to this big cultural change. The best comedy came from the confusion these apes caused and how the apes reacted to some of these new features of the human world. Now, is this film really that accurate to what would happen if a bunch of apes fell from the sky? No, especially not during the Cold War. But I don't care, because instead we got a fun and interesting movie about two likable characters experiencing a weird world they don't understand. And the ending was kind of hardcore as fuck. I generally didn't see it coming, and realistically it was the only ending that made sense. I like it when films in a franchise make big changes to the trajectory of the story. Also, the twist was great, top tier, low-key hyped for Conquest.
Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is definitely a movie that exists. Let's start with the things I liked. I really appreciated that this one did a good job of hiding the worst-looking ape costumes in the crowds and backgrounds. I kind of like the concept of apes being basically enslaved and having to rise up. Okay, that's all the compliments. This movie isn't awful. It's semi-competent at pretty much everything, except the script is kind of dumb and nonsensical. And the movie isn't doing any of its technical elements well enough for me to not care. So the movie's basic premise is exactly what Zero described as the ape's origin story. All the dogs and cats died and the humans needed pets. And said pets got bigger and bigger until it became ape slavery. This idea has a lot of holes in it. First one, it has only been 20 years since the last movie. So in 20 years, not only did they lose cats and dogs, not only did they get through enough exotic pets to work their way up to apes, but also they established a f***ing ape slave trade. Actually, just kidding, it's only been 8 years since all the pets died. They became a slave-dependent society in less than a decade. The real America couldn't even do it that fast. Another hole is that the government knew how the apes would become smart. They knew if they began enslaving apes, that eventually they would rise up. And they don't stop it.
Are you fucking dumb?
Members of the government own apes. The only steps they take to prevent the ape revolution is to make sure there's no talking ones. And they fail at that. One of the biggest problems of this film is how it doesn't give us time with the interesting part of the movie, which is the way the apes rise up. I almost fully skip over this part of the movie, and that's the reason why we're here. There's a weird montage in the second act of Caesar staring at the apes and then them going crazy. We like seeing the underdogs who are oppressed rising up and winning. That's why we collectively love Fight Club. But this movie, unlike the scripture, is not interested in showing us this. So it almost feels like Caesar is just suddenly in the workforce, and then he's suddenly the leader of the apes, and then suddenly he's taking down the entire city. And then the last 30 minutes of this 87-minute movie is a very long, very drawn-out fight between a mob of apes and a bunch of army dudes. And it is painfully long. This film honestly needs to be longer to really justify itself. The first act is pretty well paced, but the second feels like it zooms way too fast, and the third feels dreadfully long because of it. I think it would have been nice to flesh out the relationship between Caesar and unnamed ape number 28, more than just them looking at each other sometimes. I would have liked to see Caesar have a bond with anyone because he's oddly very much a loner despite being the leader of the army. Another big issue this movie has is that it's too morally ambiguous for this presence. Caesar is really hard to connect to because he's kind of a maniac by the end. He says so many unhinged and awful things that as an audience member you do kind of ask if you really want the apes to rise up. I have no problem with moral ambiguity, but it's kind of hard to do well. The biggest thing that can make it work is giving the character an extremely strong personal connection that justifies everything. John Wick only works because his initial motivation is so strong it carries him through the first movie and gets you in the mindset to accept things as they come in John Wick movies. Caesar just doesn't really have that. And one last thing I want to touch on is that this movie was low-key kind of racist. There's a line about 10 minutes in that kind of blew my mind.
Now sedate the animal and get him out of here.
What's the matter with him? He love apes or something?
Don't it figure? No.
I don't think you're allowed to say that. This movie makes a lot of weird comparisons to American slavery, which is like kind of messed up. Dude, these are apes. You're comparing the mass diaspora and enslavement of African peoples to apes. Do you see what's f***ed up about that?
That's gotta be racist. There's no way.
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is kind of boring and dumb and a bit of a letdown after the third movie. But maybe it'll stick the landing.
TV! It knows what I want!
This is the final installment in a quintology of films, and it has the lowest budget by a margin. I know I keep bringing up the budgets of these movies, but it really does take you out of the movie several times. They build up like there's going to be a big battle, and then the apes literally fight a couple cars in the school bus. The ape and human society they are building seems f***ing fragile based on the set design. The mutated humans look goofy as shit, and the effects are ass cheeks. The issue I had with this while watching, which was an issue with some of the other films so far, is that it really didn't have any intention to make any interesting creative choices from a visual standpoint. I understand this movie was made on a budget of pennies and dimes, but there are so many creative and artistic films that were made for less. Movies like Halloween, Eraserhead, Mad Max, Rocky, Breakfast Club, Enter the Dragon, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Reservoir Dogs, and Wizards. What I'm saying is that there were so many moments that could have been better shot, better edited, better framed, etc. Another weird thing about this movie is that it doesn't feel like a full movie. There's a point in the movie where they have explored the nearby ruins of a human city and we found out that some evil mutated humans are living there. This movie's really weird. And as someone who has watched a lot of movies, it felt like the end of Act 1, since the main conflict had just been established. But the movie is already halfway over, and the only way I can describe the passing and second half of this film is that the second and third acts kind of melted together into a weird mass. Like in one scene, the gorillas are talking about overtaking Caesar with their guns, and the next, they did it and it took no effort or anything. Actually took less than effort because they accidentally killed this dumbass kid and it worked out in their favor. But like, what did Cornball die from? You're fine, stupid. So let's talk about something I haven't mentioned in this video that finally is bugging me enough for me to care. These movies' timelines don't make sense. In the previous movies, it has been horrible. Like, yeah, it's unrealistic, but I guess theoretically the economy could become dependent on ape slavery in like 8 years. But Battle absolutely throws consistency straight down the shitter.
What the
So according to IMDb, which is like the only source that exists because this really is a B movie, this film takes place in the year 2003, which doesn't make sense because apparently this guy has run the armory for 30 years. So therefore, this must take place in late 2010s, early 2020s, right? Then why are all these people alive? Like, sure, the humans and I guess Caesar might make sense, but weren't the rest of the apes just normal-ass apes? Shouldn't they be ancient after 30 years? Also, this movie creates a time paradox. In the original film's timeline, it should take hundreds of years for the apes to become superior to humans due to them being enslaved and rising up, but it takes these guys a few decades to become an equal society, and apparently this society still exists hundreds of years into the future. But then if they have this society, then there wouldn't be issues they had beneath the planet of the apes that caused the underground people to set off the bomb. Better yet, we have a reason to believe that there wouldn't be an underground people anyway because there's an ape and human society. So then Cornelius and Zero wouldn't have to escape the planet, meaning Caesar wouldn't come to Earth, meaning apes wouldn't have been enslaved in the first place, meaning now the original timeline is happening all over again. And damn it, Michael! This movie is so unconcerned with being entertaining just on basic levels. The characters are f***ing boring. Almost every character is just an archetype and nothing more. This gorilla is dumb and likes war. This orangutan's a smart one. Caesar is a peaceful guy. McDonald is, I don't know, he doesn't really do anything. And the only character with a motivation is Caesar wanting to know about his parents or something, and that gets dropped out for the first half. Even the human scheme boils down to, let's kill them before they kill us, except he has no evidence of the apes being violent and therefore is just a racist.
Don't be racist.
Cut!
And the eighth villain's scheme is to lock up the humans because they suck and no other justification, and therefore is also a racist. Racism really drives a lot of this franchise, apparently. Battle for the Planet of the Apes is boring and dumb. Thank God these movies aren't that long, or else this video really would have sucked to make.
Probably working with all those filthy...
Full disclosure, this movie is the reason I made this video. Sure, Kingdom kinda sorta just came out, and that gives me an excuse, but this is the one I was most excited to watch. And oh boy, did it deliver.
He's feisty.
I think something to address very quickly is that this movie looks fucking weird. Tim Burton directed this, and his style is like not there. On top of how weird it is to choose Tim Burton, who makes creepy, spooky movies, to make a Planet of the Apes movie, he really didn't incorporate his direction into it at all. This shit just looks like Star Wars mixed with Tarzan. Star Wars already did that. It's shockingly uninteresting to look at, something you really can't say about even some of Tim's worst projects. I think something very big this movie made a mistake with was the ape designs. I think the costumes hold up fine enough. I like how they incorporated some of the more realistic ape features into them, like the orangutans' larger faces and the tall heads on gorillas. However, they really didn't think about some of the more biomechanical aspects of these creatures enough. And to explain what I mean, we need to talk about how the other two iterations of this franchise handle the apes. The originals definitely handle them as extremely humanoid, which makes a certain amount of sense because it's been thousands of years, and as an audience, we just assume they evolved human characteristics. The only real ape qualities about them is the hair and to some extent the faces. And in the newest films, they take the opposite approach. These last four movies have actual apes, and the only humanoid aspects about them are their intellect. They move like apes, they talk like apes, they definitely look like apes. And here, we have the Tim Burton movie. One that at first glance seemed to be doing something very similar to the originals with very humanoid apes. But then... The issue is how this slips pretty much into the uncanny valley. They walk around, talk, and dress like humans, but then they screech and get on all fours like an ape. And the very weird dichotomy makes it just not work at all for me. Time to talk about some performances, because there are, in fact, performances in this movie. Marcus Wahlberg plays a non-character in this, from a period of Hollywood blockbuster that I low-key forgot about, a time in Hollywood where personality and character development, those are irrelevant, just make him a cool military dude. There's a weird sexual tension between Mark and the animal rights ape. That's technically zoophilia last time I checked. Paul Giamatti spends the entire runtime doing a really weird Grinch impression.
First, you simply gut one human and you string the carcass up.
Of course, when I say we, I mean you.
It's not necessarily bad, but it definitely is really weird. Speaking of weird, Tim Roth was actually freaky. What is this man doing? Disregarding how borderline unwatchable this performance is, I think at almost every point in this movie I just found myself asking, what is this accomplishing? What is acting like a psycho when really you're just kind of dumb doing to help you at all? Bro tries to kill Mark Wahlberg when they are having dinner with the mayor. How does no one have an issue with this? I get the humans are subjugated in this society, but wouldn't this be the equivalent of like slaughtering a cow at the dinner table? Tim, you gotta chill, bro. There's some logical issues in this movie. I think somehow they wrote this film without having the twist in mind. The twist, spoiler alert, I guess, is that these apes are actually descendants of the apes being trained for space travel at the beginning of the movie, meaning this is in fact another planet. Okay, then how do they know what monkeys are? There are presumably no monkeys on this planet, so how did the term monkey become insulting? How did it even enter their dialect? Or what about humans? I believe the apes have to know they have some level of intelligence, so how are they totally chill with enslaving them? Is this another weird race allegory? And if these humans are as intelligent as they seem to be, how has it been so easy to capture and enslave them? Make some weapons or something, please. Oh, and there's this joke.
You know, I've heard her talking about apes and humans. Separate but equal.
And finally, cannot neglect to mention the twist ending. Don't you love a shitty twist ending? So Markiplier goes home to Earth at the end to find the Lincoln Memorial is now dedicated to the Tim Roth ape, and the whole planet is apes now. Huh? Didn't he go back in time? The amount of leaps in logic you have to take to believe this ending is ridiculous. First off, Tim Roth ape would have to escape from this place he's trapped in, which probably ain't gonna happen. This bro's gonna starve. But let's say he gets out, and then gets to Marky Mark's original pod. Somehow this guy figures out how to work this thing, and he's fucking dumb, so that ain't happening. Then somehow he goes back in time before Mark, probably considerable amount, and then he has to somehow get the unintelligent apes on Earth to rise up. And all of them are fucking dumb, so that isn't happening. And so this ending is just stupid and nonsensical. Thank God they never let Tim Burton remake a movie ever again.
Up in paradise up above, if you would tell me I'm the only...
Rise is pretty neat. First off, fantastic character design. These films are a case study in how shitty the Disney remakes are in terms of their animal and creature designs. The main apes are all so distinct without ever losing realism. But let's be so for real, Koba's peak character design, 10 out of 10, cool monkeys. Andy Serkis is so impressive in this film and in other installments of this franchise because goddamn does he get so much out of this role. And I know this is owed to the animators as well, but damn did they get a lot of expression out of this ape. And the nose scene, bro, I was tweaking. The humans were low-key kind of boring. Like, no, I don't care about sex fiend Harry Osborn and his dad Joe Biden, or this lady who I straight up can't remember her name. I care about apes causing ape mayhem, and the humans all get murked by COVID in the next movie anyway, so who cares? That said, this movie has a very efficient script. It moves with a purpose, which I can appreciate. I like that there was a bit of subtlety to the portrayal of the virus until there, wasn't.
It does something to people that it doesn't do to apes.
First half is alright, the second half is absolutely gas. Maurice chucks a manhole cover through a police car windshield. Rise of the Apes appeals to the simple part of my brain that really just wants to see apes run around and cause destruction and mayhem. And sometimes that's all you need in a film. I genuinely have so little to say about this movie.
If a young Metro don't trust you, I'm gonna shoot you.
I feel like for Dawn I had the opposite problem for Rise. I'm struggling to organize my thoughts. Definitely a significant step up from Rise, something probably mostly owed to Matt Reeves and his f***ing fantastic direction. This possibly has one of the most interesting opening shots I've ever seen, followed by one of the most badass shots I've ever seen. I'm a massive slut for long takes and action scenes, and this has so many long takes. The tank shot is probably my favorite shot in the entire series and might be up there in my favorite shots of all time. It's literally fire. I think Matt does a fantastic job at capturing realism in this film. There's a lot less style and a lot more unbiased filmmaking, which in my opinion is a very underrated approach when done well. The very minimal camera work draws you into the film. Same goes for the fantastic color palette. The visuals of this film are fantastic. Music's also great. Michael Giacchino has never missed, and this is no different. I love me some aux percussion. Dawn has some great production design. I love the look of everything about the apes, from their village to the face paint to some of the weird clothes a few of them wear. I love the way the human city looks and some of the overgrown buildings. Andy Serkis once again knocked it out of the park even more. I mean, shoot, he got nominated for an award for this. He's turned Caesar into such a complex character and such a lovable one too. He's a very enjoyable protagonist, and it is very gratifying to see him win at the end of the film. Now for the meat of this movie. I do think, much like The Batman, this is trying to convey a lot about people through these apes. But I think the fun of Dawn lies in reading it in a different light. Recently I started reading the Walking Dead comics, and I absolutely recommend them to pretty much anyone who likes character-driven stories. The main question of The Walking Dead is, what exactly would people do if society collapsed? And the obvious example they use in the comics is the zombie apocalypse, but I think we can apply this question to Dawn, especially since the human characters in Dawn act very similar to those in The Walking Dead. If you look at Dawn almost as a dissection of what people do after the world ends, it is actually very interesting. There are a lot of very genuine human moments, like that scene where they get the power back on. But what the script does best is definitely how it deals with themes of vengeance versus forgiveness. Gary Oldman deals with the loss of his kids, and it causes him to feel outrage and feel violent toward the apes. This guy blames the apes for the virus and wants revenge. Koba blames the humans for his disfigurement and years of torment and wants revenge. And eventually, after Koba's betrayal, all the apes want revenge on the humans. Then we have Caesar. Caesar is dealing both with his mistreatment by humans but also the loss of his human father figure, and therefore chooses to forgive the humans because he knows evil isn't necessarily their nature. In the end, Caesar defeats all of the humans and Koba. Another fun thing about Dawn is that it might be the first film since the original to genuinely comment on human society. And what does it criticize? Totalitarianism.
I see good things about Hitler also.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a low-hanging fruit to poke at dictatorships because, yeah, we know they're bad, but I don't care because fascism is fun. Koba makes a very, very good stand-in for take your pick, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him seize power. The last 20 to 30 minutes are fucking awesome. You didn't need to keep piling on complications. It was already a big enough deal. Might sound like this is a flawless cinematic masterpiece for how much I'm glazing this movie, but hold on, I do still have two big issues. The first is that this film's middle third is kinda weak. Basically, from the ape assault on the humans up to the final confrontation, it's definitely the worst part of the movie. And it isn't bad, it's just way, way less interesting than the first and third acts. And the other issue I have is just that humans overall are not that interesting. No, I really don't care about the kid from The Power of the Dog and his dad's girlfriend getting along. No, I don't care if the humans get the power on. No, I don't care that this asshole's kids died and therefore he wants to level a city. Low-key just want to see apes do shit. I don't care about the humans when there are far, far, far more interesting ape storylines happening. But at the end of the day, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was pretty lit.
Put the phone down!
This is for my safety.
Put the phone...
Okay, really quick before the serious stuff. What reason did they have to make that Fox logo so tough? I mean, listen to this.
Reincarnated, I was stargazing. Life goes on, I need all my babies. Woke up looking for the broccoli. High key, keep a horn on me. That could my seat. IP ownership, the blueprint is by me. Mr. Get Off, I get off at my feet.
War did something that not a lot of movies do for me. It made me turn off my analytical brain and just enjoy the ride. No, I wasn't scrutinizing if the script made sense or if the pacing was right. I was just enjoying a delightfully cool and absurd conclusion to a pretty dope trilogy of movies. And I think that in itself is a testament to three main things. First off, this movie is stunning to look at. Matt Reeves is phenomenal from a visual perspective, and this film is absolutely no different. Especially during the big battle at the end, the colors pop. And this is a film I actually really love the slow-mo during some of the crucial moments. The CG is unreal. Absolutely fantastic work from everyone involved in the VFX. Some of the best CG characters I've ever seen. There are a lot of significant scenes that are told completely through the visuals instead of dialogue, which I definitely appreciate. Just a very, very well-made film. Second, this film in particular is fantastic at highlighting how great his characters are. I think this is the first of these movies that has a human character that is actually kind of enjoyable. Do I wish they would just let him be fucking racist and evil and not try to make him sympathetic? Yeah, but as it is, I still enjoyed the Colonel. Maurice is a saint, and I loved all the quality time you get with him in this movie. I liked Bad Ape, played by Steve Zahn, and this little girl. Both very sweet characters, but the character that makes this movie work is Caesar. He has never been as interesting as he is here. For me, he was joined in the ranks of someone like Hellboy for being a unique and underappreciated protagonist. He's haunted by his actions and fueled by a desire for vengeance for his loved ones. He's a far cry from the younger, more energetic Caesar from Rise. He's 15 years older, he's graying hair, and he's tired. And now he has to join in one last battle to save his people once and for all. And finally, this is a compelling story. And it's compelling, and it's compelling because Caesar is compelling. This trilogy is about him, and this movie makes it very clear. This isn't the conclusion to the Planet of the Apes, this is the conclusion to Caesar's story, and a fantastically fitting one. It is a story about him having to confront his own actions and past head-on to save his loved ones. Because of that, we want that too. Every crushing moment is felt by the audience, and the final victory is too. And there really is no more fitting ending than after all the journeys and fights, Caesar gets to rest. Yeah, it isn't perfect. The script is still a bit goofy and there's some on-the-nose dialogue, but it is still an exciting and thoroughly enjoyable movie about some lovable characters. A great send-off for one of the best characters of the past decade.
This is my kingdom come, this is my kingdom come.
And now we come to the newest addition to the saga, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I like it. Has some endearing characters. Obviously, he doesn't reach the heights of Andy Serkis' Caesar, but Noah is a good protagonist, and he and his ape buddies are fun to watch. Kingdom easily has the most entertaining villain of the entire franchise in Proximus Caesar, Kevin Durand. Kevin Durant?
What the bucket?
Kevin Durand gives a very, very handy performance, and finally, after years of needing it, Planet of the Apes has a fucking straight-up evil villain. I love everything about this performance, even down to his catchphrase.
What a wonderful day!
What a wonderful day! Hold up. Wait a minute.
What a wonderful day!
What a lovely day! What a lovely day! You should be ashamed of yourselves, Disney.
As with the rest of this leg of the franchise, it looks spectacular. Just as good, if not better, than War. I just love the attention these films put into the creature effects. It's so engaging just watching these monkeys swing around, and this movie definitely understood the assignment. I love the world building in this one particularly. The eagle thing is dope as and I love the way the design team incorporated human buildings into the designs of the forests and ape structures. I actually appreciated all the references to previous movies. Firstly, because it makes Kingdom a good entry point for those who may not have seen the others, and secondly, because it never feels like it is using references as a crutch, just as a way to flesh out characters and give context for the story. No one says damn dirty ape, hallelujah! The film definitely runs a bit long. I don't mind a whole ton because of how gorgeous it all is, but especially the second half in Proximus' Kingdom was much, much slower than it needed to be in my opinion. The worst part of this film is still without a doubt the humans. I think the other three got away with things a little more because the humans were usually villains and therefore made more interesting through the way they threatened the apes. But here I just don't give a shit. William H. Macy has literally never been this based. Yes, please let the humans die out so that these movies can just have apes in them. I don't feel alienated or unrepresented by a Planet of the Apes movie being humanless. Just let it happen. This is definitely a trilogy that I am excited about. Despite my feelings about humans in these movies, the final scene was tough as hell, and it makes me excited to see where this franchise goes next. The Planet of the Apes franchise is 56 years old. Which is kind of crazy, not gonna lie. This is a very, very old franchise that has had a lot of unique iterations throughout. From the good, to the bad, to the boring, to the bizarre. The Apes movies have had a wild run. Starting with the 70s movies, I think it is interesting how fast they were commercialized. The first one was a very intellectual film about systematic oppression and animal cruelty with all kinds of 60s hippie shit. But when it took off, no time was wasted in absolutely pumping out sequels that can be seen across all facets of the medium. From action to sci-fi, to of course horror. They were made extremely fast on very small budgets and made seemingly only for monetary gain, unlike the original film which was made with artistic merit. The Tim Burton film was a fluke and a hot steaming pile of garbage that luckily no sequels are made. That's all I want to say about that, let's move on. The newest films are a breath of fresh air into this franchise and are a much more exciting mythos to me. Hell, these films don't even feel like a part of the same franchise as the 70s movies. This version of Caesar is a much more endearing and engaging character. We get to see the apes actually rise to power in these films in a way that is satisfying and makes sense. The effects are some of the best I've ever seen, and luckily they're still being made so we can continue to have stories in this exciting world. I definitely have a soft spot for this franchise. They're weird and goofy movies, but they're very lovable movies. You may have noticed that this video, despite this franchise only having 2 less movies, is way, way shorter than the Star Wars video. And that's because there's just generally less to talk about in regards to Planet of the Apes. It isn't quite the cultural giant that Star Wars is, and none of the movies are quite as deeply horrendous as some of the entries in the Star Wars saga. Instead, Planet of the Apes is a fun little franchise that I hope continues to succeed with this new leg of its story. Well, now that that's over, I can finally watch and review all of the Indiana Jones movies. And definitely nothing is going to get in the way of that. Nope, not at all. I absolutely won't make some other massive video that will take forever and will postpone the Indiana Jones video indefinitely. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the stuff. I'm going to try to upload more regularly, but we'll see how that goes. I'm also working on new music currently, so that should drop in the next couple months. I'll have links to everything in the description. I'll see you next time.